a while, but I'm glad to see you back here in the last hit. But not just that, this is the last hit here for the LPL as we are fast approaching finals, the end of playoffs, the regional gauntlet, and of course the end of the season as we head towards Worlds and look for our top 4 seeds. I'm Asterix, I'm your host, and it has been a pleasure to host all throughout the year and get to this final point. However, I would be remiss not to invite and tell you who joins me every single time. It's Dagda. It's Lyric. You boys looking fresh. I like the wardrobe selection today. We changed once because, you know, the shirts weren't blending. They weren't mending. I thought
also slightly creased.
A little bit creased. I thought mine was a bit too creased, but you guys said no. I'm kind of thinking I should have listened to myself, but we're going to go on with it anyway. We can't have any second takes, and if you need to go to the bathroom, now is not the time. Just letting myself know, especially soon. How have you been? It's been a busy couple of days with playoffs back to back.
Well, it's not even just playoffs. Like, it was the split obviously ending, and then we were straight into content. Then we're into playoffs, and then we're into TFT mode as well because we're casting that. It's been a bit of a hectic couple of weeks.
At least TFT is kind of like a break, though, right? Like, Jordan, you and I were talking about this.
Nothing's busy compared to spring, man.
Oh, yeah, true.
Even this playoff period with the content is nothing compared to even just the regular split itself.
And I think it's a nice way to round out, though, that considering that things are getting busy again, and it does feel like that spring period where it's back to back to back to back. And then we're going to get towards finals and regional gauntlet and that big 4-day burst period, and we're going to be like, what a year it's been. Because it's only been 4. A lot of people forget it was 6 in week 1 of spring. And then
5.
Sorry, it's 5.
Yeah, he wasn't.
Oh, you weren't here. That's right.
No.
Yeah.
So it was 5 of us in week 1 of spring. And then, obviously, due to COVID, LPL had a massive break of almost a month and a half. And then when we came back, it was only the 4 of us.
Yeah.
So it's incredible. I know we're kind of tooting our own trumpets, and I've started this, but it is actually incredible to see that we've made it all without.
What was your stat again? How many best of 5s? Or best of 3s?
So spring was 89, best of 3s, but I counted that as series. So some of those are best of 5s.
Yeah.
And then summer was almost 60.
Yeah.
So we almost did 150 series just on the English broadcast.
So
imagine if we're doing 7
series
days
each, essentially.
Yes.
Jesus.
So we actually did a lot. So props to you guys. I mean, for joining the LPL and coming in and like getting thrown in the deep end a little bit.
I mean, I just assumed that's like trial by fire at this stage after your year last year as
Oh,
well.
true.
I mean, like, it's just like, hey, you joined the LPL here, just let's go. You're going to be working 24/7.
And I know this wasn't really built up to be like a casting episode because we do have a lot to talk about with playoffs today. But just quickly, Jordan, I mean, this is your first year of casting out of coaching, and you've been thrown in the deeper end than I guess the rest of us.
I still remember talking to Clement when he brought me on, telling me, like, he expected me to drown. I was pleasantly surprised. It actually turned out to be pretty good.
Yeah, because in a way, you do feel like a junior Clement Chu. I've been saying it all week long. So you remind me of him. You played Kled on the Rift not only 30 minutes ago as well.
You know, it was my my ode to Mr. Chu.
Yeah. We're going to pay our respect. But speaking of paying respect, let's get into the show because I've designed a awesome last hit for you here today. And considering that we're returning to form, we also have to talk about V5 and look at the V5 temperature check.
Oh, God.
As usual, we would normally hype this one up, but considering what we've just seen, and unfortunately against Suning they dropped, the temperature check I've put in is ice cold. I'm sorry, but I think that's very fair that after what we hoped and expected, that V5 have dropped the thermometer a bit.
Yeah, it's kind of like what's cooler than being cool. It's
Look.
it's just
Look.
That's been great.
I disagree. Like, to me, V5 were like a nice hot cup of coffee, you know, like all split long. It was nice, it was relaxing. Now maybe it's a bit iced coffee, but it's still nice. It's still like warm and endearing.
Good for
and I
you.
still expect next split to be like a nice hot cup of cocoa so to come right back in.
All right.
I don't think a cup of coffee makes you sad for 2 days in a row after you saw them lose.
Coffee's meant to spring you up.
But that's also why it's so amazing. That's how you know this team is the best team ever, because their loss just
At the very least, I can say proud to be on that journey from them from 0 to 16 all the way to this summer split.
the journey is still not over. Like, next year is coming,
Okay,
and
all
we're
right.
going strong.
All right, we'll turn the show into 2021 then. Who's gonna win Worlds next year will be V5. And as always, to add on to that, V5 greater than LEC. Do I need a drum? Surely with this loss.
Can we take out if we take out the Suning game? Yes. If
No,
we put
even-
in the Suning game, I don't know.
Add in the Suning game. They are better than us.
Really?
There we go.
I don't
That's
know.
it.
I thought this would change.
I think they've
No.
missed.
You really are the Messiah.
Yeah.
Dagger?
I don't know. there was a lot of mechanics that weren't really going too hot in that suiting series. Cut out a lot of times. It
One
really didn't
series
look great.
versus like 3
Which
months
is why I
of
said,
work.
Can I take
of
out the
work.
Suning one?
You don't need to take it. I'll just add it in, and it's still better than LEC.
Well, look, I don't know whether to disagree or not, because being the scribe of V5, as you know, I have had accomplishments made by the Messiah over there.
What was our conversation last night? That he's jumped between every single hype
No,
train
hang
that
on.
has started.
He's on the LGD hype train
Yeah,
now.
true.
Look,
yeah.
look, here's where I started, right? Did I start on Vici?
You look.
I started
that in and of
V5 week
itself-
2.
No, you started kind of on IG going into MSC, got off that one when they were bad, got on V5 in week 2, then midway through the split, got on Vici as well, got off that one, stayed on V5. You were like a bit on Rogue Warriors, but you didn't really fully
I
embrace that
followed
one.
you on that one.
Yeah.
I followed you. You jumped off RNG, though. And
I
you
did.
jumped on Rogue Warriors, and then Rogue Warriors lost, and you still technically jumped off. You had to. That was the last stop.
I mean, they were exactly.
Yeah.
There was no choice. I got kicked off the Rogue Warriors hype train.
and then now you're on V5 the whole time, so I don't feel like I'm the only one. And you,
I've been
sir.
LGT since the start.
Well,
I was fourth place
To
LGT.
be fair, I never
So,
got
yeah.
off like the V5 hype train.
Yeah.
Like it was to me, it was always V5 and RNG.
I could have multiple tickets. I don't have to be on one train on one day.
I think that's physically impossible.
Well, now I'm on LGD, and that's absolutely okay. So, Dagda, what was your final answer? Sorry, V5 greater than the whole of LEC?
No.
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 Okay, so we get a yes and no, and
Yeah.
I still
Abstaining.
believe in V5 for next year, so I'll give them a yes. I don't want to lose the trust I've built with the community.
Yeah.
You know, they rely on me in case Jordan's not on the keyboard. So we'll move forward. Hey, this is meant to be a playoff preview show. I like the way we've started this. It does feel nice to end when it's been such a busy split and we get to relax a little bit. But that is not the case because we've just come through round 1 and quarterfinals. Of course, as people are watching this, it'll be in the middle of TFT, but before the semifinals. So this is a really nice break point for us to cap off how this started. Because playoffs so far, if anyone didn't catch, has been full of surprises, to say the least. Let's start with round number 1. And your thoughts on the V5 versus FPX matchup. Because even though V5 were favored being the higher seed, we did expect FPX somewhat to turn up to a best of 5.
I wasn't overly surprised. I didn't have the highest of hopes
Really?
for FPX. I've been really disappointed with them for a lot of the split. And I think actually I've been saying, I don't know if I've actually said on broadcast that I really didn't want FPX to win that series. I don't think they deserve to move on in playoffs. I think there was the growth that we've seen out of V5, the way that they were able to play at the map stage, just how good they looked on the Rift. It felt right that we kind of had that passing of the guard. And I'm glad that we did see V5 overtake them and kind of still keep themselves rolling. But yeah, I wasn't fully convinced by FPX coming in and still haven't.
I think it was a bit surprising because, I mean, that series even could have went to 5 games. It honestly should have went to 5 games based off just how Doimbi was playing. But yeah, I'm surprised they weren't able to pull through. It was Gimgoon's TP in the end that prevented them from being able to get that game 5. But still, a 3-1 scoreline potentially would have been 3-2 is where I expected it to be. V5 was definitely the better team coming in, but it was just surprising how much the other members of FPX weren't able to step up with Doimbi.
It was disappointing because, you know,
Yep.
you expect getting into a best of 5 situation, FPX then turn into, I guess, what we saw semi-finals at MSC, but even beforehand in 2019, best of 5s for FPX were one of their strongest straight with how they were drafting, how they were setting up their teams, and how flexible someone like Doimbi was, and the rest of the team could follow suit.
Yeah, and it definitely felt like it was kind of Doomby versus the world on that team.
It really did.
And I was disappointed with a lot of the player. Like Tien hasn't been having a good split
That was
at
not
all.
that was not World's MVP jungler Tien. I
No.
mean, it hasn't been like that for
That was like
a while.
that was Gimgoon's worst series since being subbed back in. That
Yeah.
was LWX's one of his worst, and Crisp Nautilus was horrible, which is sad to say. When he's played 18 games of the
no,
champion
we got
split,
to 20. I'm pretty sure we got to
oh, we
20
got to
by
20
playoffs. Yeah.
Oh, So, but exactly that makes the point even worse. So.
It's disappointing when, again, like the best in their role throughout, like Crisp was known as the best support in 2019, or at least one of. Tien was the best jungler. Gimgoon played a role that we've all talked about, and, you know, Khan had the fluctuation top lane as we could change styles. Doombi was a top-tier mid laner as well. And you can't honestly say that anymore after what we've seen in the best of 5. And there's a lot of concerns after watching that series that FPX, now guaranteed into regionals, as we'll talk about a little bit later, are not the team they once were.
And I think my concern started to come up when they had to sub Gimgoon back in, when they were just like, hey, look, Khan can't work. We don't know how to try and make this team seal together. So instead have Gimgoon come back in. And they had some good series with Gimgoon where they were able to find these fights. especially when Gimgoon was coming in on flanks. And honestly, like compared to their playoff performance, I was nearly kind of like, hey, how about we go back to the Con Gimgoon team where LWX was out sick for
I'm
the day?
surprised they didn't actually sub him in.
With Con, they beat V5 in the regular split.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and again, V5 struggle against teams that can control side lanes very well because of how V5 overcommits to one side. And they didn't do that at all. So it was pretty surprising.
Because I was going to ask you about stylistic difference coming into this series and what you expected with the two matchups going through with drafts and anything on the top of your head you want to add.
Oh, my God, those drafts. Like, I came in, once again, because me and Rob have been talking about it for weeks about Lilia, about how she looks pretty useless to us. But I've talked to a lot of pros. A lot of them are on the Lilia hype train thinking about, again, how much damage is going to get.
Because they first picked on Red Side a couple of times for TN.
The first 2 games.
Yeah.
But it did nothing. It was pretty worthless. They kept picking Kalista. It seemed like they were trying to big brain, like, okay, SamD's great on Kalista, we're going to take away Kalista. And then they kept having it in, like, the worst matchups you can have. I think they had it against Caitlyn one game as well. And it's like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And they just got destroyed every game.
And I also remember that, like, speaking of Lilia, TN had that one big moment. But, apart from that, there was nothing to see from this pick. And the amount of times they prioritize it, you're like, well, you got to let this go and actually get on with the series.
Yeah, and I want to go back to what you were kind of talking about is like playing through side lanes. I honestly kind of expected them to. I know we saw a little bit of it with Gimgoon, but I wanted to see FPX try and play through that side lane, try and exploit the fact that V5 do overextend. But the biggest issue that I've seen on FPX's side is that even when they have compositions that want to try and play through side lanes, they end up using them instead to group as 5 and then using, like, say, Twisted Fate as like a damage dealer instead.